November 30th, 1939. 3 months after the invasion of Poland and the start of World War II, the Soviet Union, at that time arguably the world's greatest military power, invaded the independent country of Finland. Armed with 3 times as many men, 30 times as many aircraft, and 100 times as many tanks, the Soviets expected a quick victory. Following years of tense diplomatic relations between the Soviet Union and Finland since Finland's break from the Empire in 1920, the small republic's fate was finally sealed in August 1939 by the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact between the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany. Included in this treaty of non-aggression was a secret protocol by which Eastern and Northern Europe would be divided into spheres of influence among the two superpowers. Finland, whose border lay just a short distance away from Leningrad, was included in the Soviet sphere. Just 1 week after the signing of this pact, Hitler invaded Poland and the world was thrown into World War II. The West, which Finns had considered their only hope against Soviet aggression, turned its eyes towards Germany, and Stalin found the moment to attack. The Soviet government orchestrated an incident in which they claimed Finns had fired artillery shells at targets across the border. Of course, this was impossible, as the Finnish general Mannerheim had moved his troops away from the border to forestall this kind of pretext to invasion. Within hours, Helsinki received the following note from the Kremlin. A few hours later, Helsinki was on fire with Soviet bombs.
November 30th, 1939. 4 Soviet armies with 21 divisions, more than 400,000 soldiers, thousands of tanks, warplanes, and heavy artillery cross Finland's borders. The invasion is almost 3 times larger than the Allied landing at Normandy on D-Day.
The Soviet Union was considered by many to be the most powerful military force in the world. By the 1930s, the Red Army was one of the largest armies ever assembled in history. Stalin's industrialization programs had aggressively modernized their war technology, with the latest tanks, artillery, and aircraft, while tiny Finland was fighting with obsolete weaponry and few supplies. The Soviets had just recently taken eastern Poland, with less than 1,000 casualties, and Soviet generals estimated that Finland would fall in 10 or 12 days.
The winter of 1939 to 1940 was exceptionally cold. The Finnish army was much better equipped and much more acclimated to fighting in these conditions than were the Soviets. Camouflage ski troopers in winter suits allowed the Finns to execute guerrilla attacks on Soviet columns, while the Red Army had only standard khaki uniforms and were restricted to movement on major roads. In addition, some ill-prepared Soviet units faced almost 10% casualties from frostbite, even before crossing the Finnish border.
Long live our Soviet motherland, built by the people's mighty hand. Long live her people, united and free, strong in a friendship tried by fire. Long may our crimson flag inspire, shining in glory for all men to see. Through days dark and stormy, while great Lenin led us, our eyes saw the bright sun of freedom above, and Stalin, our leader, with faith in the people, inspired us to build the land that we love.
While all odds appeared to be against the Finns, Internal concerns within the Soviet Union, their rugged home terrain, and their courageous character all worked to their advantage. From 1936 to 1938, Joseph Stalin initiated a great purge of the communist leadership. He imprisoned or executed more than 30,000 of his officers, including most of those in the higher ranks. In this way, Stalin effectively wiped out his highest officer corps months before initiating one of the largest invasions in history. Even the more experienced Red Army officers were completely unprepared for the Finnish terrain. Impressed by the incredible success of blitzkrieg tactics employed by Germany and Poland, the Russians sought a similar strategy in Finland. They failed to understand that the thick snow-covered forest with nearly non-existent infrastructure provided the worst environment for a blitzkrieg attack. The Soviet troops were even less prepared for Finland's winter. While the native Finns employed ski troops, white camouflage and modified weaponry, some of the Red Army froze to death because they lacked adequate winter wear. Russian tanks constantly malfunctioned and were all but useless, as was Soviet artillery designed for visibility provided by Central Europe's plains. What resulted for the Soviet Union was one of the worst casualty ratios in history. Approximately 5 Russians died for every Finn, and the ratio for vehicles and aircraft was even worse. The Finns were also nimble, brave, and adept at guerrilla combat. One soldier, Simo Häyhä, gained the highest kill record for a sniper in any major war before or since. He was nicknamed the White Death by friend and foe alike. While the Finnish forces performed incredibly, in the end the Red Army's superior numbers were simply too much. After a renewed Soviet attack on the Karelian Isthmus, the undersupplied and exhausted Finns realized they couldn't keep up their guerrilla attacks any longer. The Soviet Union, too, wanted to end the war. It had inflicted devastating casualties, it was a major source of political embarrassment, and they were afraid of possible French or British involvement. The Finns had fought hard enough to avoid annexation by the USSR, but they were forced to give up territory. As for the Soviets, one general remarked, "We have won just enough ground to bury our dead."
The Winter War did not have a true resolution. Many Finns were angered over the territory they were forced to cede, and a year later Finland allied itself with the Nazis. It fought another war against the Soviet Union, known as the Continuation War, but it was rather less successful. Interestingly, many of the problems faced by the Soviets in the Winter War would be the same as the ones faced by Germany during its invasion of the Soviet Union, known as Operation Barbarossa.
Сосняком под боком кудрявится пограничный сухой кругозор.